All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Think Realty webinar. Think Realty is the voice for all things alternative investing. When we talk about alternative investments, we're talking anything that's alternative to your traditional stocks, bonds, mutual funds. So we're talking real estate, private lending, private assets, notes, anything and everything under the sun on the alternative private side. So my name is Kurt Powell. I'm the sales manager for Think Realty. Very happy to be here tonight, coming to you from Kansas City, Missouri. We've got a really great guest tonight, good friend of mine that I've known for a number of years. Executive Vice President of Lending for Foundation, Miss Dana Georgiou, coming to you from Cleveland, Texas, just north of my former hometown, Houston, Texas. So real quick though, I want to let you guys be aware, wherever you are in the country, understand that Think Realty is really about serving the real estate investor. So we were formulated in 2015. We have Think Realty Magazine, the Think Realty podcast, and these webinars that we're doing. But what I want to draw your attention to is March 23rd, 24th in Houston, Embassy Suites in the Energy Corridor. Think Realty is coming back to Houston for the third time in a row for 2 days of great networking, great education, great deal flow. This is the time to act. As we're going to understand here in the next year, is there going to be a recession? Is there going to be a downturn? Who knows? But what you want to do is you want to be prepared. You want to know where to find deals. You want to know where to find them, who to do business with. So that is why we exist at Think Realty, is to bring all of those to you. So I'll be leaving those information in the chat box, links to the event, links to tickets, and you can also see the agenda. Dana will be there, so we look forward to seeing her in person. But this is very exciting. We're going to talk about the off-market property struggle. And just high level for Foundation, they're one of the leading national private lending platforms across the US, but they've really got a great technology platform that's going to help you find those off-market deals. So maybe you don't have an off-market deal in your backyard, but you might have one somewhere else. So you're going to find that real estate, though very local, we can do business anywhere. If we have the right network, the right education, the right tools, we can literally do this anywhere and help us expand our portfolio. So that's enough out of me. Dana, I see you're joining us. It's great to see you again.
It's great to see you too. Thanks for having me, Kurt. I'm loving getting the opportunity to chat with you and see you face to face, and
sure.
Throw a little good stuff out into the marketplace.
Well, we love it, and you and I talk again about how real estate. I kind of alluded to it in the beginning, it's a huge industry, but it's still very local. So I met you years ago when I was at Think Realty, my first run at Think Realty. I'm happy to be back. But you were at Civic at the time. And, it's funny how we all kind of go through our journey, but we all stay in touch. And I think that that's indicative of those of us that want to do things the right way. We want to do the right things with the right people. So you're somebody I've always thought very highly of, and I'm just thrilled for all the success that you guys have been having over at Foundation.
Oh, I appreciate that so much. And it is great, to reconnect with you. I totally agree. I think it's one of my favorite things about this industry is the relationships that we build, right? And whether it's peer to peer, whether it's, with our partners, whether that's internal, external, investors, brokers, whatever the case may be. And love that aspect of the business.
I love it too. And I think that's my favorite part is when we get to see everybody on that win-win side, the investor, yes, but also the guy who's underwriting the deal, the person who's finding the deal, the person who's sourcing the debt. Like, that's the best part, is when everybody can come together, have that power team, even though they may not be housed in your business. That's your power team. Those are the people that really allow you to go chase deals and go from one deal to the next and have that continued success.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk about this all the time, right? Is especially with, investors finding that right partnership, someone that is always bringing some type of value or consultative approach, right? That you get to learn from, they're learning from you. And that, it's this two-way thing. It's like a great marriage,
Exactly.
Right? Is it's always a back and forth.
Right.
So yeah,
that reciprocity goes a long way. So it's one of those things, if you scratch my back, I'm going to go out of my way to help you as well. So that's enough out of me. Again, I'll be in the chat leaving some links for the Think Realty event. For question purposes, I would ask everybody on here, please utilize the Q&A, not the chat. The Q&A, frankly, it's just easier for us to keep along and make sure that everybody's question gets answered and doesn't get lost in the shuffle. So I'm going to mute myself, go off camera. Dana, take it away. Looking forward to this tonight.
Awesome. Thank you again, Kurt. Well, good evening, everybody. As Kurt mentioned, my name is Dana Georgiou, and I am the Executive Vice President of Lending here at Foundation. We have two verticals that we offer to real estate investors and brokers. These include our financing programs for opportunities in single family and multifamily properties, and it spans a product line between bridge, fix and flip, and long-term rental. In addition to having the capital, however, we also have a unique and proprietary platform. We'll get into it a little bit for off-market properties. We have a foundation formula here, and so we'll chat a little bit more a little bit later in the presentation. But what we're really here for is to explore ways that investors can have sourced off-market properties, what has worked and what may work for you, today and in the future. So I'm going to, navigate through a presentation, but and Kurt had mentioned, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. We want to make sure we get any and all questions answered. But if you don't mind, in the chat box, I have a little poll question if you'd like to participate. So, have you had success with purchasing off-market properties? Yes, no, not yet are the three responses. Or you can, be colorful and throw whatever response that you have in there. So I'd love to know if anyone out there has had some success with purchasing off-market properties. And then a follow-up to that as we get started is, are you primarily interested in off-market properties to do what, right? What's your strategy? Are you in fix and flip, or are you in fix and hold? So love to have a little insight about that. But let's just jump right in here because, listen, the struggle is real. Our industry has been in flux of change for what is almost a year now. Early spring last year, things really took a turn in our industry from a capital perspective, from a pricing perspective, credit restrictions, and that always drives different levels within this industry, including home prices. We had seen dramatic home price appreciation over the last few years, and many of us, had never been in a market. Now, I'm a 30-year veteran in mortgage. I always like to say I've seen it all, and then just things shock and surprise me. And this is an unprecedented time. Even all of the things that I've seen in mortgage as a whole on all sides of lending, this is probably the most dramatic and traumatic, I think, in many ways for investors and people that are looking to get into real estate investing. And I truly believe in my heart of hearts, this is the best way to build legacy wealth with investment properties. So I feel you, right? The struggle is definitely real out there. But because I don't know you guys and we're not, really face to face, I didn't know if everybody really knew what an off-market property was. So I thought we'd just start out with an easy definition. And there's really just two when we're talking about off-market properties, right? The first is the property is not for sale, right? There's no indicator that the seller or the homeowner is putting that property up for sale. The second is it may be for sale, but it has not been listed yet. And sometimes that's referred to as a pocket listing. Now, that used to be very, very commonplace where a seller would reach out to a real estate agent and say, hey, I want to list my property. And the real estate agent is like, ooh, let's test the waters a little bit, right? And so they would put out maybe some pre-marketing. But what was happening is, the market was not, or the National Association of Real Estate Agents didn't feel like that was being representative across all people that should be able to have access to the information. So in 2020, National Association of Realtors put a policy in place called the MLS Statement 8.0 of Clear Cooperation. And basically, in summation, what it says is that all listings, so if an agent gets a listing, they have to, within 1 day of marketing the property. So if they put their sign in the front yard, if they, post a blurb on Facebook or Instagram, so regardless of whatever that is, if there is a public line of sight to it, that they have 1 day before that property goes up on MLS. So while it's worth noting that this isn't an actual law, right, because the National Association of Realtors is a governing association, it is, if you're a member of that, and quite frankly, the majority of, realtors and brokers are a member of NAR, have to abide by that policy. So if you weren't aware, that is something that has, impacted the, the way that off-market properties have moved, and then why they are moving more quickly into an NLS type of atmosphere more than ever over the past couple of years. So sourcing, right? Listen, one of the things that I really believe is great investors, entrepreneurs, innovators, all types, come up with insights that allow them to transform their world in what they perceive things in a different way than most people do, right? It's what makes them unique and innovators and entrepreneurs. And that's combating our natural desire to kind of sink into a familiar way of traditional methods. They're always looking to they're always open to innovative ways to leverage and achieve, just a different level of success. So approaches that teach us that by viewing things differently, we can see, notice, and visualize opportunities that no one else can. Independent thinkers, and I like to think that investors are real independent thinkers, are usually successful at this. And I'm hopeful that what we go through this evening will spark some potential, new approach, or refresh maybe some creative thinking on how to secure off-market properties for investment. And that you keep taking, all of you as investors and innovators out there, this information into the next level in your business and in your strategy. So, sourcing of off-market properties, all of these bullet points have been, traditional ways. Calling local agents, right? This is one of the easiest ways to find off-market properties, is to call a local real estate agents. Often agents know what's coming into the market soon, or they have clients that don't want to do an off-market listing, but well-connected agents will be able to give you intel on at least neighborhoods and houses to watch. So if you haven't established a relationship with realtors, definitely encourage you to do that. Off-market listing services. There are real estate auction websites. There's pocket listing services that allow sellers to advertise non-MLS published properties. You can sign up on any number of these. The Google is your friend to find, some of these opportunities, and usually you can get email notifications about new off-market properties. But there's also different, ways. For sale by owner sites, right? That's an alternative listing site. There's foreclosure, short sales, bank-owned homes. All of these would be considered off-market properties, and you can find them at real estate auctions. You can go to bank websites. You can even do it the old-fashioned way, because foreclosure notices are still published in the newspaper. But just keep in mind, these properties are going to be sold as is. So you'll want to make sure that you can do the research, or that you have the right tools to help you really research and understand these off-market properties that have potential for either being a flip or potentially a rental. Mailers, networking, wholesalers, public data resources, actually physically door knocking, foreclosure, short sale, tax sales, auctions, online, public. Door knocking often gives people some pause, but I'm going to tell you, it is really one of the most effective ways for a number of the high-end investors that I have worked with. They find a neighborhood that they really love. They've sourced a property in there. They've been able to do a flip, or they've, created a value with that property in the neighborhood, and they want more. And so what better to do to go to the neighbor and say, hey, I just purchased this property next door. We're fixing it up. We're getting ready to sell it. That's going to increase, your property value, the neighborhood, all of those things, right? Sharing that intel, with the neighborhood, and asking anybody if they're interested in selling their property, right? They're not going to have a real estate commission fee in. Now, your approach with the door knocking, needs to be in a way that, certainly, that you're always protected, right? I highly suggest, doing things in pairs. We never want to put anybody, on the opposite side, in any type of defensive position. right? So you have to be smart about door knocking, but it is a highly effective way of being able to, try to figure out what's happening in a neighborhood. Listen, neighbors like to talk too, right? So, maybe you're knocking on someone's home and they're like, no, I'm not really interested, but I happen to know 3 doors down that those guys are getting a divorce. Maybe you might want to go talk with them. So listen, people have a gift for gab. They're going to like to share, and it's a great way for you to have some potential in sourcing a property. So if you haven't tried that method, it's something that I think, every investor that's looking to get into or expanding to find off-market properties, a really, really interesting way to find them. One of the other ways is, in mailers. And just weirdly, as I was prepping for this particular, presentation and webinar, I actually got one in the mail just a few days ago. This one came from a company called Daintree Acres, and this is an actual picture of it, right? Purchase agreement. This is an offer for your property. They had my, an APN number of a little, plot of land that's attached to my property. They only for some reason selected just this one little as opposed to the whole property. They're putting an offer in writing, and then they give me, ways that it's contingent on what they need to do, what the due diligence is. You can counter offer to them and send this. So this is a really interesting way to get your name out there in a really large campaign. So if you're actively going after a neighborhood or a specific zip code, right, you can send these mailers out for pennies on the dollar and have a tremendous outreach. Now, as you know, because most of you guys probably get, fund direct mail, it usually goes in the circular file. For me, the packaging on this actually made me open it weirdly. So, the styling that you're using, the envelope that you're using, that approach can resonate and make it different. Now, I'm not interested in selling my property, so, it'd probably just go in the trash. But if I was, or I maybe had potential, maybe I don't respond to this one, but another follow-up comes in. I several years ago was doing a big showcase in Missouri, and all of the investors there were door knocking and doing direct mailers. And one of the most successful investors there, and they had literally purchased 150 properties this way, but she actually sent a handwritten note in her own handwriting. She addressed the envelope in her own handwriting, and so it felt very personalized when people received it. And it was a very casual, hey, I'm local to this area. I live in your community. I'm, investing and building a, portfolio of properties and interested in buying your property, would love to have an opportunity to connect with you, right? It didn't go to the lengths that this one did as far as, actually putting an offer out there, but the response that she got was tremendous. And she would do that on a regular cadence and follow up for the communities that, she wanted to do. So I thought this one was a, real interesting one. But listen, you've got to put the exposure out there. If you're on the hunt for properties, then you got to be on the hunt for properties, and you have to be willing to do different, that innovative thing that I was just talking about, right? For you guys as all of these great entrepreneurs, you have to think outside of the box. All over Houston, I live about an hour north of Houston. You can see these on, on streets and poles, right? I buy houses for cash. We buy houses, cash for home. This one, I actually snapped a picture in a restaurant that says, I pay cash for houses. And it's like literally on a little Post-it note, in a restaurant, like walking to the restrooms. And I thought, that's a unique approach, but somebody is going to pull that, Post-it note off of there, or someone took a picture of that, potentially. So these are just all real interesting ways in sourcing properties. Not all of those strategies are going to work for you, and that's okay, but you've got to be willing to try different strategies to see what will. So listen, in approaching a seller for an off-market property, especially in hot markets, and right now, a lot of the markets have cooled off. But, in some areas, we're still seeing, a high demand of, people that are, actively looking for property. So it's a numbers game, and you have to be willing to invest the time and to play the game. But if you do, I think it can really yield some tremendous results. You can learn a lot, like I mentioned, by word of mouth. Every social place that you are, right? Talk about what it is that you do. It is never surprising to me that I'm, standing in a grocery store line, and I, either have my foundation brand on, or, my husband is in real estate, and, someone just asks the question, like, what's foundation? Or, what is it that you do? Like, it's a perfect opportunity, and you're an investor. I buy houses. I'm always looking to buy houses. We fix them up, and, we flip them. We're looking to, help recreate communities for homeowners and affordable housing. I mean, you can put any phrasing that you want to it, but it's a conversation, and that creates opportunity. So no matter where you are, whether you're, at dinner, whether you're standing in a grocery line, ask everybody. Like, you would be surprised in your own circles the next time you go to a friend's house party, and, everyone's, raising a toast. I would bet you that there is somebody that's in that group that either has invested in real estate, knows someone who wants to invest in real estate, possibly knows someone that is selling a house, but you'll never know unless you really start talking about it. And that really is the best way, is that whole word of mouth. So if you're really serious about getting the word out and finding off-market properties, a direct mail campaign, postcard, handwritten note, similar to the publication that I got, all of those, I think, indicates an enthusiasm, right? And it's just another strategy for you to try to deploy. You never know how many potential sellers are going to be out there, and, who want to hear your offer. Now, maybe your offer is going to be low, and there'll be some countering, but you need to be prepared, right? Because when someone says yes, you need to be able to act very quickly. So you either need to have, a financing partner that you've already done some amount of pre-approval and vetting with, and all they need to do now is, review the collateral in order to be able to, help finance that, or you do it all cash. And then, you turn around and come into a private lender and maybe do, a delayed purchase where you can get some of that cash back. And then also, the financing piece of it to rehab. There's a lot of different avenues, but you have to be prepared, right? If you're going to go out there and offer someone to buy their property, the first thing that they're going to ask you is, do you have, the cash, the liquidity, to actually be able to do it? Because at that point, either they're in a situation, and, I've seen this pretty often, and I kind of used it tongue in cheek about the divorce situation, but that can move really, really quickly, because that will allow them to keep that property out of, a whole divorce proceeding or, battle. But you've got to be able to, as the investor, to really be able to pounce on those opportunities when they're presented to you. Are there disadvantages to buying off market? Sure. I think there can be disadvantages to any strategy. But, I think the pros outweigh what the cons may be. But, in some instances, maybe it could take a little longer to close, right? There's plenty of time that might benefit the seller, but if you're in a rush to close as a buyer, this could be a disadvantage because the seller doesn't have the pressure to move out quickly. Now that may work for your strategy. Maybe you don't need them, to move out quickly, right? Or maybe you could even have a rental, option for them, after you buy it, where they, can take their time in getting out because now they need to go find another property. So there's all different ways, that you can work it, but that is the flexibility part of buying off market. They're not under contract to, have to execute on something, in a very specific timeline. So as long as you can be all good with being chill for a while, then that is, something that could work. It also may be a little bit harder to determine fair market value, right? Usually when a property is listed on the MLS, you can easily compare comps, price per square footage, other aspects of the property because it's all right there on the MLS listing. It can be a little bit more difficult to do or to figure out the fair market value of a property that's available to a smaller pool of buyers. So you need to do some market intel, right? And you do this on your own. But the great news is there are some phenomenal tools. I'm going to showcase a couple of them to you here, and get with a partner that you can count on, right? You should have someone, from a capital perspective, that is willing to understand your strategy and work that strategy with you. So within seconds, you can determine what your return on investment would be. In minutes, you can determine and look into a neighborhood of everything that has sold in that. So whether it's a market that or a market that you don't know, you can have a real confidence in the value. So going in with a really strong offer to be able to win that off-market property. And then sometimes there can be fees, right? If you're working on a pocket listing services or maybe some other off listing markets, they can charge a membership fee. So those can be a couple of the disadvantages. So foreclosure sales, right? There's a lot of investors that have started kind of in the market of, hey, maybe my best opportunity, might be in looking at foreclosure or tax sales. Now there's been, as you all know, through the pandemic, moratoriums on foreclosures. The majority of states have lifted those moratoriums. And so I think we're going to see more foreclosure properties than we have seen in a very, very long time. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities out there, but you really need to know the best place to be able to source those. And is that standing? I mean, in Texas, which is where I am, we have Super Tuesdays, right? So the first Tuesday of every single month, you can go to the courthouse with your little bidder paddle, and your bank account to show you have your proof of funds or your proof of letter, and stand in the rain and bid on properties. But that's the thing, right? There are, in the traditional live foreclosure auctions, there's a lot of things that can impact that. Whether they can be intensely competitive, right? Because the market for off-market properties has, really been reduced. A lot of people are moving to this strategy. So, you could be bidding against one, you could be bidding against 100. And so that makes it a very, very competitive, and it can also be very intimidating, especially for someone that's new to that environment. You usually have minimal subject property information available to the buyers. Usually it's all cash, has to be some immediate closings, and there's usually very limited interaction between sellers and buyers, if anything at all. So as opposed to, live and in-person auctions, we've had a cropping up of the internet-based foreclosure auctions. Some of you may be familiar with some of these, platforms that are out there. And this has been adopted by some jurisdictions in attempt to mitigate some of the issues that are associated with live auctions. But there can be some deterrents here as well, including compressed auction times for timed auctions that can lead to mistakes, right? And dissatisfaction with the auction outcomes. Sometimes we can have extended bidding periods for untimed auctions, and that allows a bidder to, delay sales and kind of game the process. Usually there's little visibility of other bidders, and the opaque bidding process enabling site operators, to potentially manipulate the auction results, right? And that's a huge buyer dissatisfaction. So while I think that there's a lot of opportunity in, foreclosure off market, you have to really understand in the approach that you're using, right? Whether you're going to do live, whether you're going to do internet-based, or whether you're going to consider an alternative off-market option. And that's, part of what we do here at Foundation. And so we offer an off-market property portal, which is a trademark and proprietary portal where we have pre-foreclosure and pre-REO properties nationwide, adding to these, every single day. And there's all different types of formats that these properties, are available in there. So some can be in a live auction, some can be in a bidding process. We've got a couple of wholesalers that have put some properties up on there, so they get a more national exposure to try to market their properties. But it is a really dynamic tool. And oh, by the way, it's free. Remember when I said some pocket listing services may charge membership fees? This one isn't. It's free. It's free to everyone. You just have to come in, register, activate your account, and then you're going to be able to have access. So We've created a unique business process that's supported by our proprietary technology. And it creates this user-friendly marketplace platform where you can go in as a buyer, you can get notifications of properties that you're interested in, and you can get them directly from the leading institutional sellers. So one of the unique things about having access to this, most buyers of off-market properties don't have access to large asset managers, large fund managers, large banking institutions to be able to see, what properties are coming up available. This portal allows you access to a multitude of different types of sellers and the properties that they're putting up there from a distressed asset perspective. So it is a patent pending process that we're really proud of. Our sellers have streamlined execution, and that allows for the expanded buyer universe. Price discovery benefits, and we'll highlight a couple of those, but happy to go into any detail afterwards when there's more time. So our website is www.foundationcref.com. Once you go straight there, it takes you right into gain access to off-market deals. If you click on that, it'll ask you to register. It'll ask you to, review our addendums, right? We want to make sure that you understand that you cannot trespass on these properties. There's requirements that you're going to have to fulfill as being part of the buying population on this. But once you're in, you get to see not only, any pictures, you can add it to a watch list. You can make offers on the property. This one happens to be an MLS listed property. This one's an REO. Some of these properties are still occupied. So you're going to want to understand the risk in, potentially bidding and or winning in owner occupied properties. So we've got some phenomenal specialists that can help you, navigate through all of this. But this is a tremendous way to add another source to find off-market properties. So we talked about tools, right? As an investor, one of the critical things that you need to have at your fingertips is really understanding what's my return on the investment. These tools are made available to you right off of our website. They're called our deal calculators. You can run fix and flip, you can run refinance or rental calculators. And it's really just a handful of questions that you would put in, populate the information, you hit calculate, and then it gives you this full snapshot that you can make, all kinds of changes to, right? So this one, I have in here just, to showcase as a purchase price of $725 with a rehab budget. Here's your ARV expected to hold, for 6 months, a 2-month construction time at an 80% leverage, financing 100% of the, the rehab costs at a 10.5%. This deal, based on these parameters, would give a $287,000 profit. That's what we would call as a home run deal. Home run deals are really difficult to find in the marketplace, you guys. I'm not going to lie, right? Whether you're door knocking to find those or whether you're on our portal to find them. So singles and doubles still win the day, right? You can add up and have tremendous legacy wealth by building, single. And, so if you're on a 15%, 20% return, depending on where that property is, that may still be something that you have a tremendous amount of interest in. So it'll give you everything that you need to know, right? It tells you, here's your total cash investment. So in seconds, how much cash you're going to have involved in any given transaction. You'll know what the initial loan funding is. And then these other tabs that you can click through will tell you terms, closing costs, residual. One of the other coolest things is once you have this information, there's a blue button that will pop up and it says live MLS data. And that will take you to our partnership with Red Bell Home Genius, where you can actually go in, it'll transfer your property address and it will list out all of the sales. So now you have real market data and intel in seconds of properties that are selling within this neighborhood. So if you're not familiar with this market, now you're a resident expert in that market because you can see what has sold, what's been on the days on market, square footage pricing. Is it a like for like type of property? It'll give you listed comparables. It'll give you, properties that are under, current current contracts, so a wealth of information, that you can export that report and have it. You can also get a rental analysis. So if you want to understand if you were going to buy this as a, a buy, fix, and hold, what properties are renting for in that area. This is all available to you at your fingertips, right? You don't have to have a real estate agent involved, or you don't have to have, any other resource. This you can get, and now you've become your own market expert. So that is a really quick rundown of what we have available at Foundation, and a lot of information to absorb for off-market properties. So go forth and just make a bunch of money, you guys, and create legacies for your families. Love to hear your stories. This is my contact information. If there's anything that I can do or Foundation can do to help, if you want access to the tools that we have, we love to create partnerships. So that's where I am, Kurt.
I love it. And it's always interesting for me. I mean, I've been in real estate for coming up on 10 years now in various capacities, helping build Think Realty, and then managing self-storage. I've been on the self-directed IRA side where I got to kind of dabble in everything. I get fascinated by the different pockets of how people find a way to make real estate work for them. And it's not necessarily just a one size fits all. It's, I might like self-storage. You might like off market. Somebody else might like to loan their money to people. It just shows that there's so many different avenues in which we can make money. And the technology piece, like just seeing that kind of a breakdown, we're all very aware, and I was raising capital for self-storage, we had to take into account IRR, which really showed the time value of money. It's one thing to make money. When people always say, well, time is money. And the rebuttal is always, well, yeah, if you're trading time for money, it is. So that's when you need to really know what that time value aspect is, to know if I'm going to have to go through an arduous process at the end of the day, is this going to be worth it? So, for you, when you're looking at deals, that kind of drives into one of the questions we have is you alluded to this market being unprecedented, and what we're coming into being unprecedented. We've already kind of seen that with COVID and things like that coming out of it, but what's coming is potentially unprecedented, as you say it. So what markets, from your perspective and what you guys are seeing, what markets tend to be, I don't want to say recession proof, but maybe recession resistant or resilient? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we've seen, some migration out of urban areas into more, suburban areas where people are looking to put, a little, more green around them. And so, I think that, the suburban areas are definitely getting, a lot more action, from a market perspective. And I think are going to continue to stay, solid for performing for families. The affordability piece of it right now, like that's just the topic of the day. So we're in a rising rate environment. PS, that has not stopped. Like the feds are not letting off the gas here. If there's anybody on this call that thinks that we're not in for any more rate increases, I got $100 that I will lay down on that bet with you. I'll take that one all day long, because we're going to
drinking what they're drinking if they think there isn't more coming.
So, and not only in rising rates, right? We're seeing, from a credit perspective, especially in private lending, we're still in our infancy. We're in our growing up stage. So I think that there has been, a lot of lenders, that have come into this space over, the last 10 years plus. And some came into it with a deep credit culture, knowing that needed to be protected in order to protect our industry, protect our, our houses, and also help protect the capital, that's coming into it, right? And then there's been some, that haven't been as prudent with that, and that's really unfortunate. And so I think that we're going to continue to see some evolutions of, lenders that, unfortunately are migrating out willingly or unwillingly of this space. But as far as, markets, right? I mean, the Southeast is, anytime we talk about coastal areas, people just, they love to live near the beach. So we see a lot of action in Florida. We see Texas is a tremendous market. And I'm going to tell you, the Midwest is really, where I see a lot of requests coming in. Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, because there's still properties there that are affordable, right? To buy, to fix them up, and really to make those affordable in a market where we have higher interest rates, that a family could still buy that and, be able to make their monthly mortgage payments. So seeing a lot of action in the Midwest, and I think that's going to hold.
It's interesting that you say that, because the webinar we did last month with guys out of Vegas, they've been doing turnkey for years, helping people find turnkey properties. And it's amazing how I think the people who are looking at things maybe the right way, and that's just my opinion, it's echoing those same sentiments of the Southeast, but in particular the Midwest. And he told me that St. Louis was his #1 market last year. And I about fell out of my chair, because I've grown up in the Midwest and been to St. Louis, love St. Louis. But when you have a stat that you're the murder capital of the world, it's like, how is that possible? And it kind of speaks to the old saying of, well, just because maybe I wouldn't live there, somebody is going to. So that creates opportunity right there. So it's interesting that you're echoing those similar sentiments, that the Midwest, for years being looked at as flyover country, it's where you can make a ton of money, and if you do it right, do it properly. So another just kind of a thing that we talked about at the very beginning is the personalization piece that you mentioned, about somebody taking that extra step to handwrite something. The personal touch is such a big thing, and sometimes it can get lost in the transactional nature of it. But if you're a rookie or somebody who's just getting started, maybe an experienced investor is just getting started off market, personalization, would you say, is one of the key factors that can help you make or break whether or not you're going to get the deal?
Absolutely, right? Making that connection, whether that's through a handwritten note or, having a conversation, right? If you get the opportunity to stand in front of a prospective seller and they understand where you're coming from, right? Like, you're a member in that community, you've got kids in the school, right? Like, just building a bridge somewhere, you're going to get a deal over someone, that's coming in, from, out of state, that's just looking to make a buck, right? Sure. So yeah, I absolutely think that this business has to stand on that personalization and those relationships.
Put yourself out there, essentially. It's, go for it. That don't let that be the reason why you don't get a deal, because you're kind of stuck in your shell. Like, put yourself out there. It's amazing in this industry how much people do sincerely want to help each other. Especially
listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. There has never been anyone in my entire career, which has been long and wonderful, and I've been so lucky to be a part of this industry for as long as I have, that when I've actually said, hey, I could use some advice, or would you mind helping me? There's not ever been one person that has said, no, I'm not doing that.
That's one of the reasons why I love it too, is that it's a very giving industry, because everybody started at the bottom and everybody remembers how hard it was. So when you attain that success, man, you want to pass it on, you want to share that. And to me, it's an old expression. It's not what you keep, it's what you give away. That's what really allows the business to continue to prosper. We got a question, how do we access that amazing software? Do you just go to fundwithfoundation.com?
You can go to foundationcref.com, www.foundationcref.com, and it'll pop right up for you, and it says access to off-market properties. You click right on that and you'll fill in some information. It starts the process. You'll get an email about activating your account. We can connect you with, one of our property specialists. If you're just interested in buying properties, we can connect you with one of our originators if you need financing. So it's kind of this dual approach.
Awesome. And we got a question from Anonymous. What are you projecting as the terminal rate for the Fed funds rate increases?
Oh,
we're going to end it with the best question.
I think that there was some people that were surprised last fall when we saw, the big jump. I don't think the big jump is over yet. I think before we get to the end I think we're going to have, 3 increases. I think this next one is going to be moderate. And then we're going to see a hefty jump before the end of the year. So, I really do think that we can be well above another 100 bips, add on, which, that's tough, man,
Yeah.
right? From profit, that eats into profitability real quick with investors. But again, you can be smart if you're using calculators, right, to understand what that investment is and you're baking that in. Let's look at the ways. And that just means that you have to get more creative in how you're also
Exactly.
buying properties, right?
Exactly. And,
Yep.
and I think that if anybody on here is new and maybe get scared of that, you have to understand that as investors and people who eat, sleep, breathe this, is it scary? Yes, it is to a degree, but it also creates an incredible opportunity. And this is where those partnerships come in. And you have to understand that, yeah, you got to have some skin in the game, but the notion of OPM, other people's money, you're not going to have that if you don't have that network and going back to that personalization of putting yourself out there. So I would tell people, don't be scared, just be aware of what's coming. And you've said it a couple different times, just understand it, but know what you're doing, know what you're getting into, and run those numbers. Make sure you know it's worth, number one, is it worth doing, but can you even afford to do it? And if not, how can you strategize and partner to still get that deal done?
Yeah. The partnership is a key thing too, right? I think that's an old school approach. I mean, when we saw private lending first starting, we saw people partnering together. Someone had the money, someone had, contracting experience. They came together, to go into it. And, over the past couple of years, there's been a lot of capital available where, someone that virtually didn't have a whole lot of money and didn't have a whole lot of experience could get into it. That's not the case anymore, right? So we're going to have to go back to some old school ways of really bringing partnerships together, so you have the strength in the sponsorship with the right collateral, right? On my team, we talk about knowing your customer and knowing your collateral.
And what is the backbone of that? Really, it's due diligence. I mean, doing the due diligence on the deal, that's 50% of it. Or you could even argue it's a lesser percentage than doing your due diligence on the other people that are involved in that. What is their track record? What are they even doing what they say they're doing? And I would tell somebody that home run deal or the doubles, singles, triples, they're going to be there. The alleged once in a lifetime deal, is that a real thing? Who knows? But I would tell people, don't get gaga, over one particular deal, because there's going to be several others that come after that. So make sure that you've done your due diligence on the numbers, yes, but know who you're doing business with, know who you're buying from, know who the sellers are, know who your financing people are, know who's sourcing the debt, know every angle of it, and know more than everybody else that's in the deal. That way, for sure what's happening for you. Because ultimately, I'm out for my best interest more so than almost anybody else is, because I want to prosper. And it's okay to be a little selfish in that regard.
I totally agree, right? We all have families. One of the reasons why we're doing this is to create, either legacy wealth, or we want to quit our day job or whatever, which by the way, I don't. I love my day job, so I'm all good there. But that's kind of the formula that we talk about at Foundation here all the time, right? Is getting the right properties, the right collateral, having the right capital and the capital partner, and then having a speed of execution. That's what gets you to profits.
Yes.
Right. That's what wins the day all the time.
And that gives you your time back. And at the ultimate, like that, somebody asked me, well, what's success for you? And to me, success is having the ability to say no. That ultimately is what I want, because that all goes back to time. I want more time for myself, I want more time with my family, my loved ones. And I agree with you, real estate trumps everything when we're talking about how are we building legacy wealth, how are we building a lifetime of wealth and living life on our terms. This is the way to do it. So Dana, I appreciate you so much for being on here, and good to reconnect with you. And I know I'm going to see you in Houston. So
can't wait.
Yes, mutual. Cocktails on you, cocktails on me. Whoever's on here, go to thinkrealty.com. The link is in there. Come meet us in person. Arm yourself with a network, arm yourself with education, say hello to us. And again, start building that network so you can succeed and achieve everything it is you're looking to do. So Dana, thank you again. Appreciate it very much. I'll see you very soon.
My pleasure. Have a great night, you guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Take it easy, everybody. Have a great night.